In five, four, three, two, one. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Hoops HD's final preseason podcast of the 2015-16 college basketball season. We are recording this Wednesday evening, less than 48 hours, less than 36, or just a little over 36 hours until the start of college basketball games, 11 a.m. Friday morning. With Vermont at Eastern Michigan, also Columbia tipping off at that time. Here we are for our final preseason podcast, though. Let's start by introducing everybody. First of all, I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. Joining us, let's start down at the other end. First of all, David Griggs. David, how are you doing tonight?
Good. If I have to watch one more exhibition game, my eyes are going to start bleeding. I am ready for real basketball.
Well, the good news is there's only a couple exhibition games on Wednesday evening, and then we are on for real basketball. Second joining us is Joby Fortson. Joby, how you doing?
Doing quite well. Looking forward to the season, and this is the fun podcast where we'll actually get to see a bracket.
We'll be seeing a bracket, yep.
Yeah.
Also, John, both of our Johns with us. John S. First of all, John, how you doing out there in Big East Country?
Doing quite well, and also be awaiting later on today the 2015-16 Team of the People.
Yeah, we've got a lot on the calendar for tonight's show. Also joining us, John T. John Titel. John, been posting some great interviews. If you haven't been reading them, go read them right now. But John, how are you doing?
Good. Down to Robert Morris at Penn and Pacific at Arizona on Friday. Very exciting.
Yeah, Robert Morris at Penn was just upgraded to an ESPN3 broadcast also, so that you'll be able to watch that game without having to pay the Ivy League's fees for it.
That's the MVP of the preseason, ladies and gentlemen, John Titel.
We have a busy schedule tonight. What we are going to be doing tonight is we're going to start by revealing my preseason bracket, follow that up with everyone giving our Final Four and National Championship predictions for this season, do a little preview of upcoming games for the first weekend, and ending by christening our Team of the People for this year. Will NJIT repeat? Will it be somebody else? We're going to find that out tonight.
If I may, real quick, Chad. Well, hell, I don't need your permission. Everybody out there that always points out, the preseason brackets don't matter, it's stupid. Yes, it is. We agree. But what's even more dumb than that is pointing out something to everyone that they already know. Yes, we know everyone starts out at 0. Everyone's RPI is 0. It's just a hypothesis. Everything is a supposition. We know that. So don't write in and tell us something we already know.
Yeah. And I created this bracket. Let me start by saying how I created this bracket. I took the preseason conference previews that I've been posting on the website for about the last month now. I basically took the teams from the conferences in the order that I ranked them in those preseason previews, put them in. Anybody that I thought was potentially be an NCAA tournament caliber team ended up with about 85 to 90 teams, I think. And then it wasn't much more than flipping coins as to who got in and who didn't. There was a little bit of logic here, but honestly, this was probably the quickest bracket I prepare all season because you don't have objective data to look at for these teams to see who is better than not. It's all not much more than guesswork. I admit that. This is just my guess as to where we could possibly end up based on what I think teams will do this season.
Right.
There is no science to this, so don't think that there is.
Right. It's all hypotheticals, no data. As there's more game results, it'll be more data based and less hypotheticals. But the one thing about this podcast is that I'm on it, and I know what's going to happen. I actually know it. So if you don't want any spoilers for the season, you might want to turn it off now.
Okay. Well, on that note, David, if we can focus in on my screen, we're going to see here a blank bracket.
Yep.
If that is up now, and what we're going to do is I'm going to be revealing one line at a time and then throwing it out there to each of you to tell me how crazy I am with each of these picks. So are we ready for the 1 seed?
I think we are. Oh, it worked. All right. Exciting on television.
Excitingly, here we go. These are my 1 seeds: Kentucky, North Carolina, Maryland, and Kansas. Let me start with John. Your thoughts on my 1 line here.
Which John would that be?
You're John T. I apologize.
No problem. It seems like a solid one line. I think that in November, those teams are all right up there. I don't think all four of them are going to make it to the Final Four in Houston, but it's very solid to start. They all have solid coaches. They have McDonald's All-Americans. They have a little of everything. So, well done.
All right. This was one of the easier lines, though, but Joby, let me throw it over to you here. We do have one ACC team on the slide.
I actually think you're wrong because there should be 2 ACC teams on your line, and they're not. You know what? The Maryland bandwagon is just so heavy. I mean, I think Maryland's a good team, but this is a team that did lose Des Wells. They just had another injury today with Wiley, or yesterday. They're a good team. They could easily be on the 1 seed, but I feel like the hype might not match what their total results are going to be. And you'll hear me speak about another one line, why they will not be on the 1 when you reveal who I think should be there instead. And I'll keep my mouth shut for now.
I mean, Kansas is up there too, and I think they were by the 4th they were the 4th. I get them sent out to the West of these 1 seeds, and we still don't have confirmation that Diallo is going to be eligible this season, which is ridiculous now on the eve of the season. David, your thoughts on what's going on here with the NCAA getting clearances on these players so ridiculously late?
Well, it is ridiculously late, and it's really frustrating. I realize that they are understaffed, but it just I don't know. You haven't made a decision yet. He's either eligible or he isn't. What's the problem? I mean, make a decision. I mean, to keep somebody out there in limbo is ridiculous this late into the year, and it'll probably go 2-3 weeks into the season, knowing how the NCAA operates.
And that's not even considering the player at South Florida, who is also waiting to be cleared, and I think is getting ready to possibly sue the NCAA if they don't take any action soon.
If they would like me to help, I will come to Indianapolis and help. I will make the decision.
My understanding is that Diallo has also hired an attorney at this point to get this resolved. There's a player from St. John's, not that we're going to talk about them again tonight, that was actually ruled ineligible today, one of their key freshmen. So,
boy, are they in trouble now.
So, yeah.
Wow. Oh, man.
But if we are ready now, I think we'll move on to the 2 line. These are the 4 teams that missed out on being a top seeds, probably not by much. Indiana, Iowa State, Duke, and Virginia. 2 more ACC teams. Joby, let me throw it over to you here.
Well, you solved the ACC problem. I guess that's okay. I actually point to, so you think 2 Big Ten teams are going to get top seeds. And Michigan or Michigan State's not one of them. Indiana's good. Once again, we're all doing guesswork. Iowa State's, though, the one with new coach. Let's see. They've got, Nang's great player. Let's see. I'm not so sold on Iowa State. They might be much lower at the end of the year.
I like Duke a lot. I like them more than Maryland. I would have had Duke on the 1 line. I like them a lot. And how much fun would that be if Duke and Maryland played? It's, again, not quite the same when they're playing home and home, but wow. Could we move that game out of Chicago and maybe to D.C. or something? That would be great.
Let me bring John S. in this act. Actually, I did do a little flip here. I actually had Virginia ahead of Duke on my S-curve by 1 spot, which means mile-wise, they should have gone to Raleigh and Duke should have gone to Brooklyn, but there is that unwritten rule that says Duke must play in North Carolina, so I flipped those 2 teams and where I sent them. But John S., your thoughts on this 2-line here?
Yeah, I'm seeing, a pair of 1-2 matchups that would be pretty compelling. Not just Maryland and Duke that we've already discussed, but how about Kentucky and Indiana possibly facing each other in Louisville?
I missed that.
In Louisville.
Yeah.
Let me throw it over to John.
That'd be fun.
John T., your thoughts on this? Am I completely off base with these 8 teams so far?
You are not completely off base. One of my favorite tourney stats is how teams do in their home states. Duke playing in the state of North Carolina 34-6 all time. That's an 85% win-loss percentage. I think Indiana's a bit high. If we were just going on backcourt, they're certainly a 2 seed. I don't know if they can handle big guys on the likes of Kentucky and North Carolina and Diamond Stone in Maryland and perhaps Shake Diallo in Kansas if they get there. I love the Iowa State pick, and I like the Virginia pick. I don't know how much Justin Anderson is going to hurt them losing him to the draft last year.
Chad, the irony is, if you ask Duke fans and Virginia fans if they'd like to trade, both of them would say yes.
It really was just Duke was so much closer to Raleigh that it was.
Duke would love to play in Brooklyn.
Isn't Duke located in New Jersey?
It's a bus ride.
Let's move on to the 3 line here. These are also 3 more protected seeds, and John T. There's your Arizona Wildcats, along with our Big East champions Villanova, Gonzaga, and another Pac-12 team that will surprise people. I've got small up here.
It's a nice-looking 3 line. I hope Arizona is a 3 seed and they lose into the Elite Eight in the Elite Eight to Wisconsin as they have the past 2 years in a row. I think that might be a little high only because they lost so much talent from last year's team. I hope you're right, but and Cal is a 3 seed. That is putting a lot of pressure on some super frosh in Robb and Brown, but if they're as good as advertised, they could end up that high.
Well, I'll tell you that I was really looking at it. I think Arizona and Cal are real close in the Pac-12, and if the 2 of them can dominate the conference, I think they could both end up as protected seeds. And we'll see what we have on the 4 line here. But let me throw it back over to John S. Your thoughts on here, including your since you're the Big East guy, your Big East champion being here on the 3 line and getting the games in Providence and potentially in Philadelphia, which is allowed this year. We did confirm.
I don't think Villanova would mind a 3 seed if they can at least get to the Sweet 16 this year. But Villanova aside, I also like a couple possible rematches should Duke and Gonzaga play in the Sweet 16. And also, this would be a regular season rematch if Virginia and Cal face each other in Anaheim.
Actually, I just want to point out here, as we go through this bracket, I may have violated some bracketing rules in some of the first-round matchups because I did not completely double-check every team versus its out-of-conference schedule this year, and I do apologize for that, but we're in the preseason still, so who knows, that game may not get played because, the Air Force carrier that they're going to be playing it on might sink or something again. But
those are guidelines. Something else to point out, you're sending Gonzaga to Spokane. Gonzaga is in Spokane. How is that happening?
That is happening because Gonzaga does not play their home games at the arena that's going to be at, and Gonzaga is not the official host school for this. It is actually, I believe, the University of Idaho hosting the Spokane games.
They're co-hosting with Washington State.
So Gonzaga is absolutely allowed to play in Spokane this season.
Crazy.
But Idaho cannot be placed there. Just
no.
If they're in your bracket. We don't know if they are or not, but if the Vandals are in the bracket, they can't go to Spokane.
They cannot go to Spokane.
Right.
Oh, by the way, when you guys get a chance during the podcast, go to Idaho's roster and just Google that roster, and you'll see a familiar name on there.
Yeah, yes. If everybody, we find this out during the season as we do some under the radar podcasts. But I am playing for Idaho this year.
All right.
Chad Sherwood from Albany, Oregon, is on the Idaho roster. But let's move on here to our 4 line. And these are the last 4, the protected seeds. Our American champions, UConn, Utah, 3rd team out of the Pac-12, the Wichita State Shockers, and our 3rd Big Ten team in Michigan.
Sorry. No.
Wow.
I am getting beat up on this. Joe, go ahead.
And I held my tongue with Cal being on the 3rd line, but now you're going Utah on the 4. The Pac-12 doesn't have the quality wins down the stretch of the conference to be able to produce that many protected seeds at that high a level. It just doesn't. I actually think Arizona, if the freshmen come home, could, if they do what they usually do, which is win the regular season title, they're certainly a 1 or a 2. But then it's going to be tough for. I mean, Cal's got to win in Charlottesville. You're basically saying that. I mean, because Cal doesn't have opportunities in conference, really.
It's not just Utah on this line, but there's also UConn. I mean, there's a certain correspondent that's not here tonight who I'm sure would be very pleased to see those teams up there.
Wow. I mean, I like Michigan. I don't know if I like them that much. I think, what is that, the second Big Ten team you have in here?
Third. Maryland, Indiana, Michigan.
Oh, yeah, Maryland, Indiana, Michigan. I can't help but notice that there is a Big Ten team that is conspicuously absent from the 4 line, or better, that will be there.
Okay.
Because Tim Miles is
I was trying to figure out where you're going with that. But
he will crush the non-believers.
Let me throw it over here to John T. Then. I'm being told you're the Pac-12 guy, and I'm being told I'm overrating the Pac-12 conference. Am I?
I mean, every team. Arizona lost Ashley and Hollis Jefferson and Stanley Johnson. Utah lost DeLon Wright. I mean, maybe they can be replaced, but I think you're giving them a lot of credit that they have not yet earned. I hope you're right as a Pac-12 guy, but I also am not as high on Michigan as many others are. They've got talent, and Beeline has proven he can win in March, but I'm not sold on their team just yet, especially after last year's, frankly, disastrous season.
What about this UConn pick? I thought I'd be torn apart on that one, but I'm not seeming to hear much objections on it.
I kind of like. I don't know. The jury's still out on them. I don't know if I'd have them that high, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad pick. They are pretty good. I think that their ranking will be high because there's just. I could see them. I think they're going to dominate an American conference that isn't very good, but it's good enough to where if they get done what they need to out of conference and then don't stub their toes in conference, I think they're going to land that high. They could.
But UConn also scheduled accordingly because they'll also be testing themselves against Georgetown, Texas, Ohio State, and the Atlantis tournament.
And my quick fun fact, how many tourney games has Kevin Ollie lost as a coach?
Zero.
Let's. Well, NCAA tournament. He did lose in the NIT last year, but
right.
Let's pull up the 5 line here. I think things are going to get worse for you guys attacking me than they were, but let's see where we are. LSU, Oklahoma, Texas, and Florida State.
Whoa! Florida State.
ACC guy wants to speak and say that. Whoa!
Go for it, Joby.
Florida State.
Florida State. Okay, you're a believer in Hamilton. Florida State could be 4th in the conference, and they will be an NCAA tournament team. I do think so. But man, 5 line. I guess. Virginia, Duke, and North Carolina have to get their good wins in conference somewhere, as I was referring to the Pac-12. Florida State, I guess, will have to be one of them. But
I think Leonard Hamilton is phenomenal when he's playing NIT teams at home.
John S., your thoughts on this line and where we're going. I put Shaka Smart in here. I know that's probably higher than most people would have them rated as well.
What?
I think Oklahoma is being a little undersold as a 5 seed, but again, they would have a chance to potentially make the Sweet 16 out of a bracket like this. But we'll have to see. LSU is another team that also has some talented freshmen coming in.
I think the Simmons pick with LSU, I think that's a perfect seed for him. I'm kind of with John S. and Chad. I think that's a great – they could be great. They could be out. I think 5 speaks exactly what it is. And I agree with John S. I think Oklahoma's a little underseeded there.
John T., this Florida State pick, I think you were on board with me on that Florida State. Do you think they could end up this high, or am I a little crazy?
Yes, they could end up that high, but I think you're a little crazy. No, they bring back, I believe, their top 6 returning scorers and add in a McDonald's All-American and Dwayne Bacon. And I like Leonard Hamilton, even if he doesn't have a ton of Final Fours on his resume. I want to talk about the 2 other coaches. Oklahoma's Lon Kruger. He's been to 16 tourneys, NCAA tourneys. He's won 16 of his games when he's got there. LSU's Johnny Jones has been to 3 NCAA tourneys and won 0 games. So even though I think LSU belongs arguably that high, I don't think they're going to make it to the Elite Eight. Not that Jones is a bad coach. He just doesn't have the coaching experience of many others.
And here's another thing I just caught. Wouldn't Oklahoma like to trade places with Texas here if you look at the sub-regions?
Yeah, I believe that may have come down to I think that may have just come down to Texas being higher up on my which one makes sense? Like, what if I had Oklahoma over than the S-curve? There may have been a bracketing issue involved here.
Well, they're both Big 12 teams.
But they are both Big 12 teams. I will have to double check on how that happened. Yeah. But let's move on to the sixth line. Cincinnati, John S., your backyard team. Vanderbilt, another SEC team. Butler and Xavier, a pair of Big East teams here also. Let me start with you, John S. This is really your line here.
Yeah, usually these are the kind of seedings that teams like Xavier, Butler, and Cincinnati wind up with at the end of the year, but usually during preseason we're used to seeing them either around the bubble or just slightly out of the field. I just hope that's not a harbinger of things to come where they're bubbling around again come March.
David, you have thoughts on this group here?
I really like this Cincinnati team. It's been a while since we've seen them deep into the tournament. They've had some great regular seasons and then just had some bad luck with matchups. I like all three of these. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised. I certainly like everyone on this line a lot more than Florida State.
Okay, John T. Do these four teams all belong above Florida State on my S-curve?
I think you're looking less crazy now because I think that Florida State is better than some of these teams. I am really not sold on Cincinnati. Bringing back a coach who had health problems and missed most of last year, while they had a good tournament, they got destroyed by Kentucky, though obviously who didn't last year. And I think they're a year away. They have a lot of juniors and sophomores, not a lot of senior leadership. And as far as Vanderbilt, again, like, maybe they are that good and I'm just underrating them, but I don't even know if they're a top 8 seed, frankly. I still don't know why they're ranked. I don't get it.
Joby, your thoughts on this? And I've got Butler in there as well. We haven't discussed that.
I'm not sold on the Butler Xavier since this is the messy line, obviously. But, I actually think Vanderbilt, if I were doing it from scratch and I had not read any preseason rag, I might put Vandy here because I really like Vandy. But John T. hits it. Everybody's saying how much Vandy's their dark horse. We talked about it during the SEC
dark
week.
Horse.
Yeah, and they're not a dark horse if you're ranked. So it's like, but I do like Vanderbilt enough to say, yeah, sixth line is a good place. I'm not as sold on the other teams. I feel like this is where you draw more. If you're going to go from some of the Midwest schools, I feel like we dip back into the Big Ten for like your Michigan States.
Well, let's see who shows up on the 7 line then. Talking about Big Ten schools, we've got 2 of them here, Purdue and Ohio State, along with Miami. And yes, you can attack me on this Utah State pick, but I'm picking them.
You are mentally ill.
And we went over this in our Mountain West show. They are my pick to win that conference. And when they have a great season, I'm just going to laugh at you all.
And I'm glad you enjoyed the mushrooms I sent you, but for beginners, you're not supposed to take them in large doses. God, Utah State on the 7. Oh, I don't. Wow.
Meanwhile, I love the Miami pick. I mean, I think Miami's going to have it. I almost would flip Miami and Florida State in my personal predictions, but that's just me. I think Larinaga is going to be something. He's going to do some work this year. Can Miami play Duke that early though? And likewise, Virginia Ohio State's a rematch of the Big Ten ACC.
Miami and Duke
meet in the round of 32.
Yeah, the Virginia Ohio State rematch is allowed in the round of 32. And Duke and Miami only play each other once during the regular season, so that is an allowed round of 32 matchup as well. Unless they
I think they avoid that. You know that they try to avoid it, though. I mean, but you have these Big Ten schools on that I mentioned, and Ohio State, Purdue are certainly teams I would have thought in that 6 line that we discussed. But what was the team I named? Michigan State. Where are they?
Are Indiana and Purdue not playing twice?
Yeah.
They're only playing once.
Wow. I thought that was sort of protected or something.
They had actually in the past played a non-conference game against each other to get 2 games in, but they did not. They're not doing that this year, so it is only one time, and it is allowed. And Joby says they tried to avoid it. I have not seen them try to avoid it, and that's why I did not try to avoid it.
I don't think they'll try to avoid Virginia, Ohio State. I think they'll try to avoid conference teams.
But they haven't done it because I've analyzed the way they've actually bracketed the last few years, and they have not gone out of their way to avoid that new rule. But let me bring John T back in here on this. Other than the Utah State pick that no one's going to agree with me on, how about these other 3 teams?
So I want to look at the Purdue pick because I really think Purdue is going to be better than a 7 seed this year. I'll defer to our scheduler, but I believe they play 2 of the 6 seeds, Butler and Vandy, during the regular season. So we'll get to see. I like the on-court action and the eye test to speak for itself. So if they can beat one or both of those, I would maybe bump them to a 6 and bump one of the others down to a 7. Additionally, Purdue last year lost in the NCAA tourney to another 6 seed, Cincy, by 1 point in overtime. And Purdue brought in a McDonald's All-American and Caleb Swanigan, so I think they got better than Cincy, so I would have them seated ahead of Cincy.
Fair enough. Let's look at the 8 line. The top 32 teams: Texas A&M, Georgetown, Rhody, and Louisville.
Well, Louisville's in trouble because they did something awesome, and that's just too bad. But I could see that being a distraction. I think this is Louisville's ceiling. I could see them getting as high as an 8. I don't think they're going to do any better than that. I really like Rhody, and the other 2 I just don't know enough about. I've got way more questions than answers.
Well, let me bring John T back in on. Do you have any answers about A&M or Georgetown?
So Georgetown does bring back. They had a lot of freshmen last year, and Smith Rivera entered the draft and then changed his mind. I actually like them as the 8 seed, although I don't know who they're going to play in the 9. If they have to play North Carolina and Raleigh, good luck to them. Rhode Island is everyone's dark horse, so I think that's a decent pick. And I don't know how far they are from Brooklyn, but that could make for an interesting matchup with whoever they face. And Texas A&M, I really don't know how they're going to do. Billy Kennedy has 1 NCAA tourney win in his entire career. He's bringing in a lot of freshmen to put with Daniel House and Jalen Jones. That might be a little high for Texas A&M.
Let me turn to John S. on this. Do you agree that on what John just said?
You must have seen Georgetown every time they played Providence and Xavier last year. That's probably the only reason I could think of that you keep underrating them.
Oh, really?
Although last year was one of the few years in recent memory where they didn't lose to a double-digit seed, either in the Big East tournament or the NCAA tournament.
All right. Well, if we're ready, we're going to move on to the 9 seed again. If I do have a regular season rematch here, I apologize. I just,
Chad,
yes.
I mean, I can't. I guess we're going to see him on this line, but you're way underseeding Tim Miles.
Well, why don't we take a break here, actually, as we have half the bracket revealed, and kind of throw out some names there from everybody as to who I have completely missed out on that should have been in here. David, let me start with you. Besides Tim Miles.
Well, I mean, I'm not surprised that we haven't seen them yet, but a team I really like. I like their non-conference schedule. It's good, but it's not great. It's not too hard, but it's not too easy. I really like Old Dominion. I don't know if it wouldn't surprise me if they would be wearing white, but I like them a lot. But I'm not surprised we haven't seen them yet.
Well, you and I differ on that, so that's going to be the reason why I haven't seen them yet. But Joby, any thoughts on something that I'm really missing so far?
Yeah, well, you've heard me. Izzo is pulling his hair out watching this. But beyond what I've said already, I think you're missing some Big 12 teams like a Baylor. Even though I'm not a fan of Baylor, especially in the tournament, the fact is that conference is set up for RPI boosting, and so much so that I think you're going to see them supplant a Rhode Island who might not have the schedule. And Baylor gets a few random quality wins against your Texas sitting there, etc. Baylor, I could easily see pop in and wear white.
How about you, John T?
I have to echo the Izzo thing. I mean, they're ranked, I think, preseason 12 or 13 in the nation, and I
I
believe
don't like them.
Izzo is one of the top 5 active coaches in tournament won-loss percentage among active coaches. He's up there with Coach K and Patino and Roy Williams and
Kevin
Calipari.
Raleigh.
As far as the one other team that caught my eye, the defending national runner-up Badgers, obviously they lost a ton of talent, so that explains why they're not way up there. But to see some of your teams ahead of a Wisconsin Badger defending national runner-up team is a little surprising, frankly.
John S., anybody else you want to throw in here?
I'm probably going to get pummeled by my fellow Xavier fans for mentioning this, but I've noticed the Dayton Flyers have not been mentioned yet.
Yes, that's a team that we're going to see if and when they do appear. And why don't we go right on here to the 9 seed line? There is Michigan State. There is Dayton, along with West Virginia and San Diego State. Dayton getting a matchup with A&M, Rhodey against Michigan State, Georgetown, West Virginia, Louisville, San Diego State. A little old Big East matchup there in Raleigh.
Yeah.
David.
Louisville, San Diego State would be fun. I like the San Diego State team. Everyone loves watching them.
They can't put you to sleep. What do you mean fun?
Beautiful basketball. But yeah, I don't know. Louisville traditionally likes to push the pace a little bit. It would be interesting to see what they would do against a team like San Diego State. Rhodey, I got to agree. I guess I think Michigan State's a little low. But yeah, I think Dayton. This is pretty much about where I expect them to end up. Right, 8-9 range.
Joby, I know you West Virginia is probably not the one you would have picked out of the Big 12.
No, I think when I was saying Big 12 teams, West Virginia was actually one of the teams in my mind. Baylor just popped in first. I think both of those teams will be wearing white, most likely. I would actually pick all the 9 seeds versus your 8s. Every single game, I'd pick the 9 seed.
All right. Well, John T., should I just flip my 8 line and the 9 line, and then maybe get a little more respect from you guys?
Not all of it. I mean, not that Steve Fisher's a bad coach, but nobody's made a lot of money betting against Rick Pitino in the month of March. So it's also going to be an ugly defensive Louisville-San Diego State game.
Oh,
and
it's beautiful.
As far as the Brooklyn scene, I don't think Turgeon is going to be very excited to see Denzel Valentine and Tom Izzo, even if it is in Brooklyn. That is going to be that could be I don't know if Maryland's getting to the Sweet 16 out of that one.
But thankfully for Joby, Michigan State and Virginia will not be in that same region this year.
I was just assuming Chad would make them a 7. I mean, in Brooklyn. I mean, they're in Brooklyn.
Yeah. What do you have against Baylor? Jeez.
Well, let's take a look at the 10 line here, see if Baylor shows up or not.
Whoa.
No, they don't.
Whoa.
There's Wisconsin along with George Washington, another Pac-12 team, Oregon, and my pick to win Conference USA is not Old Dominion, it's UAB. We went over that the other night.
Yeah.
David.
Well, in regards to UAB, I like them this year. I don't like them as much as Old Dominion. I think that a lot of the hype they're getting is reacting to one game, and it was a huge game against Iowa State, as opposed to being 16-15 and nowhere near the NIT when the regular season ended. They won the conference tournament, but they won it in Birmingham. They're good at home. They struggle on the road, even against subpar teams. You look at their schedule, and it's missing something, namely good teams. And you almost feel that this game coming up, even though it's the first game against Auburn, is somewhat pivotal, because if they lose it, it's one of their few chances to get a notable road win. I just don't know if their schedule will allow them to get up this high.
Well, let me throw it over to John T. here. I also have another Pac-12 team here in Oregon, as well as a George Washington team that's in your backyard there, or your front yard, I think we determined. Your thoughts on these teams?
Several thoughts. So first of all, since they always accuse the committee of stacking the deck to have special matchups, to have Jim Larinaga going, obviously he was at George Mason, not George Washington, but have the Virginia area battle, I think is fantastic, as well as the ACC Duke-Miami matchup following that. I'll go on record now as saying Wisconsin is beating Utah State in that game if they play, And then as far as St. Louis, I think that Purdue-Indiana game would be fantastic. I only hope that they play each other in the Big Ten tourney so that they play each other 4 times in like a 3-month span, because I love when those kinds of things happen.
Joby, your thoughts on this line here?
Joby, you have to unmute yourself.
I actually think it's a pretty good line. I think UAB's David touched on it. UAB's too high. Even if they were the champion of the league in the regular season, I don't think they'd get all the way up to a 10. I just don't see that. We're missing another team, though. What about you're from last year's run? We're missing some. I've been bitching about Baylor, bitching about Big Ten schools. Now I'll bitch about the ACC. Notre Dame is missing, and I know they lost. Maybe the heart and soul of their team with Grant, but they do have a nice inside presence coming back and some outside shooting.
Well, let's see here. John S., I don't think I got your thoughts on this line before I move on.
We do have one historical matchup in the 7-10 games, and that's the very first NCAA championship game ever staged between the Ohio State University Buckeyes and the Oregon Ducks.
And that's exactly why I set that game up.
Right. I mean, you can't tell me that the committee doesn't set games up like that. I mean, Chad knows what he's doing.
All right. Here's our 11 line. Baylor, Boise, Tulsa, and BYU. There is your Baylor team. No Notre Dame, no Old Dominion.
Cincinnati just can't get a break. Wow. So Notre Dame, Old Dominion, and Baylor, Major Field. But wow. No, Baylor isn't. Okay, I like Boise and I like Tulsa, and I think this is. And when I say that I like them bubble or inside. This is about where I could see them ending up. They're inside the first 4. I like Baylor a lot more than this. I think Baylor and Butler will be a great matchup between 2 top 20 teams. I don't see that happening in the round of 64. It typically doesn't, although it has. I think Winthrop was ranked real high one year and played, but was seeded really poorly. So
I don't think Xavier would be too thrilled with a matchup like this, with Boise State just going a few miles down the road to Spokane. Although Boise's going to be happy not to have to go to Dayton this time around.
John T., let me bring you in here on this line here. I've got BYU. I did put a second team for the West Coast Conference in here. I know I think you like this BYU team also.
I do, and I'm trying to figure out as a Wildcat fan who I want Arizona to face in the next round, assuming they don't pull their notorious flame out in the 3-14 game. I don't know if I'd rather face Cincy or BYU. Those are both, those are tough. And especially in Denver, BYU, I assume, would travel pretty well staying out west. The other one that catches my eye is Boise. Playing in Spokane, I think, will help. I'm telling you, if Cal's freshmen are not for real, playing in Spokane against Boise, that is upset potential written all over it.
Well, if Cal's freshmen aren't for real, they're not going to be a 3. So.
Joby, I know you very strongly disagree with Baylor being this low, and I think I could be talked. If I had somebody.
And what's funny is I don't really like you almost picked Baylor where I think they should be ranked as a tournament team, but I'm just thinking what their resume is going to look like at the end of the year. I think that Baylor is structured in a way that does not lead to tournament success. I actually think the other teams you pulled for, like your Boise, like your BYU, those are pretty solid picks. I can't disagree too much with them. But yeah, Baylor, just because the Big 12 isn't – I mean, besides the bottom 2 teams now with Kansas State and TCU, every win is going to be over an NIT or high NIT level team or better, as we see, I mean, from the other conference teams in there, everybody from Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, West Virginia. Oklahoma State's going to – and Texas Tech are NIT high teams, or we could see them in. We'll see.
Well, let's go now to a 12 line where we're going to see both of our first 4 matchups. Also, you'll see that little box that says top 4 out down at the bottom populate as well. This will
This
give us
definitely deserves a drum roll here.
drum roll, please. There it is. Our last 4 teams in were UCLA, Evansville, Auburn, and VCU.
Mm-hmm.
With Arizona State, Old Dominion, Oregon State, Loyola not making it, and the 5th team out was Notre Dame.
Wow. Wow. Well, Notre Dame has started off ranked in the top 10 and missed the field entirely before. So who knows? It's not that outrageous. Although they were pretty good last year. UCLA, even if they have a good profile this year, I'd be against including them because they had no business getting in last year and they got in. So let's just, even if they're on, it should be on the 7 line, I'd say kick them out. Auburn VCU would be a enormously entertaining game to watch.
Yes, it would.
And now you have plenty of time to also remember the duo of Valentine and Markevicius for Evansville.
Yeah, and Chad, can you, just for clarification, I mean the bubble, it was James Madison and Valpo, were they inside of it, kind of sandwiched in between it or as automatic bids, or were they out of it, and where would they have been in the top 4? Essentially rank these, I guess, 10 teams 1 through 10 on how they appeared. Well, I mean, we can see where the top 4 appeared, but how did your S curve go?
Yeah, I had as a top 2 here were UCLA and Evansville, followed by, I believe I had Valpo, James Madison, and then Auburn VCU as my last 2 teams.
Okay.
I believe that's how I went. But again, at this point here, it was almost, how well do I think Auburn's going to do versus how well I think Oregon State's going to do, Old Dominion's going to do, Evansville. It's,
We're all starting out at 0.
We're all starting at 0, and it was kind of a tough call here. John T., let me throw this line over to you also.
I love the possible Texas VCU Shaka Smart Invitational matchup, so I hope that one works out okay.
I'm glad someone caught that.
As far as the other ones, I don't think James Madison is going to get the auto bid from the CAA. If they do, more power to you for predicting it. And best of all, as an Arizona fan, any scenario that involves Arizona State coming this close and missing out on NCAA tourney makes me very happy.
Well, they moved up a couple spots just for having the curtain. But,
distracted. The greatest piece of fandom ever.
Let me throw it out there to each of you, though. It turned out anybody else that I completely missed out on. I know that Notre Dame was mentioned. I know Old Dominion, who was my second team out. Joby, anybody else that I really missed out on leaving out of this field that sticks out to you?
There's not any glaring team to me. I mean, like I said, I think Oklahoma State could challenge staying in the Big 12 area. But for the most part, I think you nailed it. We both have discussed a big-time sleeper team, but you shouldn't feel bad for leaving them out. Out of the ACC is Wake. Wake could make a surprising run. They have opportunities for wins in the conference. You grab some of those wins that they lost last year, like we said, like the Duke game, like the Virginia game. All of a sudden, we are talking about a tournament team for Danny Manning.
John T., anybody else that you want to bring up?
2 that jump out to me, I like teams that have a proven track record, so who made the tourney last year and who bring back a lot of guys. 2 of the ones off the top of my head who made it last year, love Bob McKillop, and they bring back a great backcourt of Sullivan, Gibbs, and Barham. The other one is the Iowa Hawkeyes, led by former Penn star Fran McCaffrey, made the tournament, lost to Gonzaga. They bring back Gessel, Udhoff, Jock, Woodbury, Clemens. I'm not saying that the other teams who missed the tourney last year haven't gotten better. I was a little surprised that those 2 teams who return a lot of guys from tourney teams didn't make it.
So that was Iowa, and who was the other team?
Davidson.
Oh, Davidson. Okay.
Yeah.
Davidson, David Griggs, your thoughts?
Well, Davidson is one glaring omission. The other is, and he will crush the non-believers. How can you leave Nebraska out? I just don't understand.
John S., can you interrupt me here and stop the Tim Miles discussion?
Well, someone who's followed the A-10 a long time, there have been a few occasions where we've heard Rhode Island is going to be on the brink of the NCAA tournament, so a little curious that they're being selected and Davidson is not. So, but the other team that I would possibly mention that could be a dark horse out of the ACC, not so much Wake Forest, but also NC State. I know they lost a lot of talent, but they do have a knack for getting a few unexpected wins during conference play.
Yeah.
I actually would think Syracuse would be a better pick here than NC State, but that's just my personal opinion. Though I don't have either one of them in. But let's run through the rest of the league, the rest of the bracket here. Let's start with the 13 line. These are all auto bids. We've got Belmont, Iona out of the Metro Atlantic, the Stephen F. Austin Lumberjacks, and the Central Michigan Chippewas, who get to play Michigan, who they do not match up with during the regular season.
Interesting line, and again, we covered a lot of this on Under the Radar the other night, so we're not going to spend as much time. SFA has an enormously important game, probably their biggest game in less than 48 hours, against a Baylor team who you don't have in.
Yes, so they're an 11 seed.
Oh, okay, against an 11 seed. It's the best team they play. It's one of the few shots they have at a quality win. And again, if they don't get that, they probably end up on the 13th line. So huge game for them on Friday.
All right, let's reveal the 14 line. I'll turn it over to Joby with this one. Chattanooga out of the SoCon, Louisiana Lafayette out of the Sun Belt, Bucknell, the Patriot League champion, and Cal gets UC Irvine in Spokane.
That should be fun. UC. I can't disagree with that. I think everybody on the 13 I'd put ahead of them, and 14. I'm sorry to be boring, but that's pretty well. And they're all 14 level. I like Louisiana Lafayette. We mentioned that on the Under the Radar broadcast.
Right. Let's go to John S. as I reveal the 15 line here, where I've got New Mexico State, the WAC champion, as winning the automatic bid at least.
Boo.
State.
They're not the champion.
We'll get that in a few minutes. Columbia and South Dakota State. John, your thoughts on this line?
I was going to go back to the 14 line briefly and mention how Bucknell would be doing without their coach. Was it Dave Paulson that's moving on to George Mason?
Correct.
We'll be curious to see how that shakes out. But among the 15 line, I'd be curious to see if it's South Dakota State or their neighbors North Dakota State out of the Summit League.
Yeah, I think we agreed the other night that's real close between those two teams. I went with South Dakota. I went with the Jackrabbits. But final line, let me go to John T. with this for comments on any of these last four lines. But here we go. Stony Brook and NJIT getting Kansas. And then the first four games, High Point versus Hampton, and Robert Morris against Alabama A&M.
So the one that jumps out to me, well, a couple. Stony Brook against Caroline and Raleigh, have fun with that. NGIT against anyone, see, good luck. I would love to see High Point beat Hampton and then get to play Maryland. Obviously the Terps are great, but as we said the other night, John Brown is one of the best all-around players in college basketball, and to see him work his magic, or try to, against the Terps would be very entertaining, I think.
Let me just pause for a moment. We've mentioned Alabama A&M, we've mentioned UAB, and we've mentioned Auburn. Which team have I not mentioned out of that group?
Would that be Auburn Montgomery?
They're D2.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Troy.
Oh, Troy? Yeah, it's South Alabama?
Yeah. USA.
Wes Graves down there.
All right, well, on that note, I'm going to, if I can figure out how to do it, we're going to turn off the screen share here. Maybe. Maybe not.
You're
there
back.
We go. And I'm back. That's the bracket. Anybody have any final thoughts on the bracket before we move on to our next phase of this podcast?
You're crazy. No. Baylor on the 11 line. Notre Dame not in at all, and no Nebraska. You are nuts.
Tom Izzo has officially put a hit on you.
Yeah.
Just by conference breakdown, I had 7 Big Ten teams, 6 from the Big 12, 6 from the ACC, 5 each from the Pac-12 and the SEC, 4 A-10, 4 Big East, 3 Americans, 2 Missouri Valley, 2 West Coast.
Mm-hmm. One of everybody else.
One of everybody else. The next phase we want to discuss is our Final Four predictions, and for this, we're going to go through everybody here and not necessarily going off of this bracket. You don't have to, make a Final Four from the bracket that I created, but I want to feel from each of you who you think your Final Four teams will be at the end of the season, and then I'll throw mine out there as well. And not only a Final Four, but then throw out there who you think of those 4 teams will win it all. John T., let's start with you.
Alrighty then. So you always got to put at least a couple number 1 seeds in the Final Four. All yours are certainly capable, but if Diallo is not eligible for any reason, I think Kansas is out. And as good as Maryland is, they are unproven in the tourney. Mark Turgeon's been to 6 NCAA tourneys, only won 6 games. He's a good coach, just doesn't have the track record. I love guys like Roy Williams and John Calipari who have proven records of getting there and winning it once they get there. So I have the Tar Heels and Big Blue Nation as 2 of my picks. And as far as some 2 picks that are not on the one line, I know Mark Few's never made it, but I really like this Gonzaga team. I think that they never get to the Final Four, so why should this year be any different? But something tells me they will, and playing in Spokane would certainly help, obviously.
Yeah.
And then for the other one, I'll just try to find someone a little farther down. I love teams with All-Americans because anybody can score 28 points a game for a bad team. Not everybody can score 15 points a game for a good team and help that team rise as far as they can. I like Lon Kruger as a coach, and I like Buddy Hield as an All-American.
Damn!
I like the Oklahoma Sooners to make the Final Four.
Wow.
You stole my thunder! Oh.
Who wins it out of those 4 teams, John?
It is not going to be Gonzaga or Oklahoma to win it all. It'll be one of the lure teams. I don't know enough about all the Kentucky freshmen, and if Marcus Page is healthy, he's got enough talent around him. I think Roy Williams puts another ring on his finger. So he'll.
Oh, God.
Joby, let me turn to you. I think you just revealed who one of your picks is, but what are your other 3?
Oh, that was my surprise pick. Well, Kansas will not win the regular season title in the Big 12. Instead, it will be your Oklahoma Sooners. Not saying they will get a 1 seed out of it because everybody will beat themselves up, but I really like this Sooners team. The fact that Spangler doesn't have to play center anymore. He gets to move around. I mean, the fact that they brought in Manyang, from JUCO, if he can get just 6 and 8, 6 points, 8 rebounds, that loosens up the whole team. And then Buddy Hield, everything John said is right on. Ironically, I also agree with John on 2 of his others, the 2 blue bloods I choose. Sorry I'm boring, guys. North Carolina is this year's Kentucky. I'm not saying 40-0, but they're that team that returns so many guys who you go, why didn't these guys go pro last year, sort of team. And Kentucky, until it's proven that they can't do it year in, year out. And, well, yes, I will, with the last call, pick a homer pick, and I will go UVA. This is the best UVA team, even without Anderson. This is the best UVA team, especially tournament-oriented, I have seen out of all these 30-win teams that Bennett's had. They have senior leadership with Brogdon. Everybody talks Justin Anderson, but Brogdon's the key. And they have inside out with Gill, Toby. And the key people that they are going to have to rely on are people who are not freshmen, but good freshmen who now will have their chance to expand their role, like Mariel Shayok. They are a very solid team. I like where UVA is, and so that'll be my surprise team since John T. stole my real surprise team.
So who wins it all, Joby?
John T. and I are of the same mind. I think strength wins out, and Roy gets another national title that will, a few years from now, be vacant.
Enjoy it while you can.
John S., let me turn over to you here. Who's your Final Four?
Well, I'm just going to go ahead and skip past Kentucky and North Carolina because I think we can go ahead and lock them in. So I'm going to go with 2 other picks that probably aren't going to be on anyone else's radar. My third is going to be Wichita State because they're going to have a pair of returning guys in Ron Baker and Fred Van Vliet who both have significant NCAA tournament experience and with the right region could possibly make a deep run. And my 4th team, I think I alluded to this earlier, which is probably going to alienate me among the Xavier fans, will be the Arizona Wildcats, even though they have a little bit of retooling to do. I think Sean Miller finally makes his first trip to the Final Four this season.
And who wins it of those four?
I'm going to say Arizona as another
Wow.
surprise.
Yeah,
Wow.
that is.
David, you're up.
Okay. Well, I'm going with Kentucky for reasons that have already been said. I like Duke. I like their young players, and I've been a huge supporter of Duke and what a great road team I think they are for years. I really was impressed with them last year. I like them this year. I'm going with Gonzaga. I agree with John Teitel all the way. I think this is the year it happens. They have one of the best front courts in the country, if not the best. They're going to be battle-tested with the schedule they're playing, although their conference is a little bit weaker. And for my fourth team, and again, I was thinking Wichita State, but I don't know if they're going to be experienced enough to get there. I was thinking Virginia, but they can't ever seem to get past the Sweet 16. I still don't really know who to go with that, but I think I'm going to go with Kansas.
Okay, and Kansas was for myself. Oh wait, David, who's going to win it all before I go on to my teams?
Duke. I like them to repeat.
Repeat, really? Okay. Yeah. Kansas is a tough call for me, especially until Diallo's eligibility gets cleared up. If it does get cleared up, I may have had them in my Final Four, but right now I'm going to leave them out. I am going to agree with everybody at Kentucky. I think they're the only consensus pick. I am not putting North Carolina in my Final Four. I'm going to go with Duke. My third team is Joby's team there, the Virginia Cavaliers. I think they're also a Final Four team. And my fourth team, somebody that nobody's mentioned yet, has a history of not doing anything in the NCAA tournament after great regular seasons. I'm going with the Villanova Wildcats.
Villanova. There you go.
That's a ballsy pick, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did make it.
And finally, my champion, Joby, the Virginia Cavaliers. I see them coming out.
There you go. Senior leadership.
This is the same person that left out Notre Dame. Let me remind you.
And as Utah State,
Utah State.
All right. Now, as we know, the games are starting Friday morning, 11 a.m., the first game, Vermont at Eastern Michigan. Just want to run down a few games that highlight, if anybody wants to throw out some comments about these games here as we go through them. Coming up on Friday from South Dakota, Colorado is going to be battling Iowa State in a early battle of two power conference teams.
Why is that game in South Dakota?
It's at the Sanford Pentagon in South Dakota.
Yes.
Why not?
Oh well, and they wanted to put it. They wanted this to be an aircraft carrier game, but they couldn't find one in South Dakota.
We also have an interesting game, Pitt and Gonzaga. That game is in Japan.
Brother.
Okay. Gonzaga gets the benefit of 3 hours time change there.
Brother, what time is it going to be in Japan when that game tipped?
John T., we've got this North Carolina Temple game. The only reason I'm really even bothering highlighting this one coming up is Jerry Palm has Temple as an at-large team in his preseason bracket. Okay. I mean, did you see anything there at Temple? I didn't see it.
I mean, as people might have seen by my Fran Dunphy interview the other day, he's one of my favorites all time, as he did so much and was the Penn coach when I was at Penn. That being said, I think that, and it's not in Chapel Hill, it's in Annapolis, Maryland, so
right.
A true neutral site game. Maybe Philly will have a ton of people going down from the city of brotherly love to cheer on the Owls, but it's going to be a tall task for my man Fran, so I think the Heels will take care of business.
A couple other games Friday night. Kentucky is taking on one of the teams that we thought to finish at or near the top of the America East, Albany, but it should be a destruction. Yeah. Georgia is hosting Chattanooga. They could be in first fight there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's going to be a good one.
Yes.
Couple others here. A big rivalry battle, David, that you like on opening night. Delaware State.
Wow, yeah. I can't wait for that one. I mean, the state of Delaware is just under siege right now. Huge stuff going on there.
There's actually a lot of animosity between those two schools
Oh,
because
yeah.
Delaware State feels like they are always underfunded by the budget. It's, if you've ever seen Delaware State people, I mean, there is venom out of that, and Delaware isn't that good this year.
I thought you were going to refer to the, is it St. Joe's LaSalle? No, St. Joe's Drexel or somebody. Drexel's playing somebody.
Yeah.
Those are the only two programs in Delaware, is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Yes, they are.
Joby, I know you like this Florida team a little bit, even though we didn't have them in the bracket. They're playing at Navy as the second half of that doubleheader with the Temple, North Carolina game.
David Robinson's not playing, is he? I mean, as long as David Robinson isn't playing, I think Florida doesn't have to worry too much. Plus, while Gainesville's not on the coast, Gators are used to water. I mean, it'll be fine.
We already mentioned the SFA.
And in Florida, I should have mentioned during the bracket show, is I think Florida will make the tournament. But I could see why someone would let him off right now with Donovan leading.
Right. We mentioned the SFA Baylor game, the UAB Auburn game, but we went to South Dakota. We went to Japan. Let's go to China also with Texas and Washington. John S., how about that?
I must admit, that's my research when I was looking at some of the schedules. I was going to comment and say I think for Gonzaga and Pittsburgh, you're looking at about a 14-hour time difference between Eastern time and Japan's time zone, so we'll see how that plays out. China, you're probably looking at about 10 to 11 hours.
Just moving on through the rest of the weekend. Saturday, there's not much in terms of marquee games because it is still a college football season day. Although NJIT is Kentucky.
Yeah. So Kentucky's going to just Albany and NJIT. Wow.
Yeah. Sunday, Wake Forest is at Bucknell in a little bit of an interesting game there.
That one is.
That is.
And they're going. That's on campus.
Yes.
Interesting that they would. I mean, good for them, but it's not the kind of game you normally see. Much less than an opener. And
a good rivalry game coming up Sunday night, New Mexico State.
Yeah, that's one of our favorites. They're playing early this year.
And then that's round one of their series.
Yeah.
Correct. Coming up Monday, starting Monday evening is the ESPN 24-hour marathon. It begins, or more than 24 hours, I guess. It begins around 7 o'clock Monday evening, goes all the way through till late Tuesday night.
There are breaks this year, though.
Basketball. I believe that David Griggs is going to be streaming nonstop during the whole entire thing of him watching the games.
Yeah, a 30-something-hour podcast. There's breaks in it this year.
There was a couple breaks in it, unfortunately. It's not quite. You may have to get an hour or so to get some sleep. But some of these games, John T., let me throw a couple of them at you. Tennessee starts their season on the road. Well, that's not the start of the season, but Tennessee's on the road at Georgia Tech. And the big Virginia GW game, both part of the early part of that marathon.
Yeah, I was hoping to attend the Virginia GW game in my front yard with a press pass, but that request is not looking good at the moment. The other one that jumps out to me is Belmont at Arizona State. You got a brand new coach in Bobby Hurley. You got the established coach in Rick Byrd, who's won like 600 or 700 games. So I hope the Sun Devils are on upset alert for a 10 o'clock Eastern start in Tempe, Arizona.
I like Belmont. Again, if they want to get inside the bubble, everyone starts out at 0. Winning games like this will help. So
another real interesting game there Monday night. San Diego State's at Utah.
Yeah.
And we also mentioned the Baylor-Oregon game earlier. That's the 11:30 game. After that, it starts going into the overnight games. One other game, though, David, I want to throw at you here. 8 o'clock coming up, 8 o'clock Monday night. Crowley's Ridge College getting their 1D1 game at Houston Baptist. Your thoughts? One of our favorite non-D1 games.
Well, Houston Baptist, it'll be one of the few games they win, I guess. I went there to cover that game last year. Houston Baptist, who knew they had a drinking policy? I am not allowed back.
Just throwing out there, the game's starting 1:45 a.m. It's BYU at Long Beach, Nevada at Hawaii at 4 a.m., Green Bay at East Tennessee State at 6 a.m., Stephen F. Austin at Northern Iowa in a rematch of a really good game from last year's marathon at 8 a.m. Valpo is at Rhodey in
That's a great one.
really good game, 10 a.m., so everyone should be awake by then.
Yeah.
And then we move into games like Alabama-Dayton, Colorado-Auburn, Oklahoma-Memphis, and then into the evening. We will discuss those Tuesday evening games coming up in our podcast. We'll have Monday night. But any other thoughts on any of these first weekend games? Let's start with you, David.
No, I mean, again, SFA Baylor, I think it's really important. UAB Auburn, really important. More so with SFA, but it's a storyline of teams that might be good enough to get inside the bubble, but will have very few chances to prove it. So even though it's day one, you still have a sense of urgency.
John S., you have any thoughts on these games?
Probably not so much those games, but on Saturday, the Xavier women will have a doubleheader with Mount St. Joe's. This will be in commemoration of the Lauren Hill tip-off game from last year. So Xavier will be playing in Evansville, and Mount St. Joe's will be playing, I think it's Hiram College. In
the same team they played last year.
Game.
Yeah.
And those games will be on Fox Sports Ohio, which would also be part of some Dish and DirecTV packages.
All right. John T., any thoughts on this first opening weekend games?
Well, somebody has a birthday coming up Sunday, and one of the most entertaining gifts he'll see that day is Iona at Valpo. A couple of teams who did make your bracket, and I think correctly so. And Iona is just this super high-scoring, crazy team with everyone's favorite coach. So against Bryce Drew, so it should be quite a nice little matchup.
And how about you, Joby?
I noticed that Baylor, the TV Disrespected, we will be able to judge them very quick with two very key games to start off the weekend slate.
I just want to throw one other game out there that I missed, actually. We'll first run down coming up Monday night. James Madison in West Virginia on a neutral court, semi-neutral court in Charleston.
Thank you. Yes.
Another nice-looking game. But on that note, we want to go to our final topic for the night. Every year we select. It's an annual tradition that began in the 2014-2015 season. We select our team of the people. Last year was NJIT.
Yeah, we weren't even calling them the team of the people yet. This is our adopted team.
Our adopted team.
We love this team unconditionally.
They had a great season. The win at Michigan, making the CIT, which we thought was their cap for the season anyhow, and then making a run to the semifinals, losing a close game that they actually had a good lead on in the second half at Northern Arizona before their season ended. They are a candidate to repeat as team of the people this year.
If they're in a conference.
We threw out a few other names, including Texas Rio Grande Valley, Brown. One name we didn't throw out the other night is Omaha, who is in their first season as a full D1 team eligible for the postseason. And we threw out the Grand Canyon Antelopes. Anybody want to have any more comments about any of these possible adopted teams before we make our final announcement? John S., I know you weren't here with us the other night. Any thoughts on these teams?
I don't think I would really have any other teams to add, but I would nominate NJIT for one more year now that they have their first real shot at an NCAA tournament. What is it, their 9th or 10th year of eligibility at the Division I level.
Right, we've got some music playing here, and Dave is going to reveal to us who the team of the people is for this year. So we're going to have the music, drum roll.
Okay, this is taking... All right, can we see it?
There they are.
Right.
The GC
Thunderdale.
Okay, now why is it this team? I don't know. Run down the reasons why we picked them. Like we thought last year that there was no one more unique than NJIT, that there couldn't possibly be anybody more unique this year. It was so much fun watching them go from nothing to making the CIT, to doing as well as they did, to beating Michigan, to getting into a conference. I mean, it not only met expectations, it way exceeded it. And after thinking about it a little bit, as much as we like them, we just don't think even if they make the NCAA tournament, unless they go to the Sweet 16, they will be able to make the kind of jump over this season that they made last season. Grand Canyon is in a very unique situation because of a couple reasons. They are a transitional team that has a chance to finish in first place in their conference. That's only happened once before that I know of. Generally, transitional teams come in last or very close to last. This is a team that has a chance to come in first. They are a for-profit school that when they transitioned up to Div 1, it pissed off the Pac-12. That's another reason to love them. And they pissed off the Pac-12 after they announced their mega TV deal for $1 billion or something like that. And they're just Thunder Dan's the coach. What else about this team do we like?
Well, David, you have a hashtag there for Twitter, Lopes Waiver.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, okay, because they're a transitional team, they will need a waiver. They are not eligible for the postseason. I mean, the NCAA tournament, the NIT, or even the WAC tournament. They will need a waiver from the NCAA. So like we did with NJIT when we were trying to get him into the CIT, we need to take to Twitter, hashtag Lopes Waiver. You can tweet at the NCAA. There it is right. Let me see here. You get technical diff. You can tweet at the NCAA right there. Hashtag Lopes Waiver. We need to make this happen. You can call the NCAA. There's the number. Call the NCAA. Tweet at the NCAA. Tell them to let the Lopes play. These are your Lopes. This is the team of the people.
The team of the people, ladies and gentlemen, the Grand Canyon Antelopes under Thunder Dan. Our pick to win the regular season in the WAC. Right now,
who are they open against, Chad? Like you're supposed to be talking about them. So Portland State, your Lopes, Portland State. The game is streamed for free.
And woe are the Louisville Cardinals when they run across them in the Yum Center.
Right, yes, and right now it looks like their cap is going to be the CIT. I'm going to throw it out there. I think this team could be your CIT champion if we don't get the waiver. But
we're getting the
waiver.
Do it. Do it now. Everybody watching this is either on their computer or on their phone. Do it now. Get on there. Tweet at the NCAA. Hashtag Lopes Waiver. Let the Lopes play.
Let the Lopes play. Well, on that, let's go through if there's any final thoughts. This is the end of our final preseason podcast. Beginning Friday morning will be the games. Any final thoughts on us heading into the season? Let me start with John T.
So one thought I have is just that we had a bunch of preseason All-American guys in your bracket, like George Niang at Iowa State, Buddy Hield at Oklahoma, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't see Providence in the bracket, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because I don't know if they deserve to be. Chris Dunn is arguably the best player in America. He might not make the NCAA tournament.
Isn't that kind of routine for Providence? Just have a great player or two and just not be a tournament team. John S., any final thoughts?
Well, we're recording this on Veterans Day and for opening day and for other games throughout November. I believe there are going to be some colleges, Xavier among one of them, that are going to offer complimentary admission to active and retired people in the military. So if you've served our country, thank you very much for your service and keep up the good work.
Absolutely. I can't echo that enough. Joby?
Excellent point, John S. I can't add any more. I'm just excited for the games. And, yes, thank you to all our veterans.
And Mr. Griggs?
What are we doing now?
Any final thoughts on anything as we head into the season?
I'm more than ready for the season to start. The preseason coverage has been great, but again, my eyes are bleeding. I need real basketball. It starts on Friday. All the banter that we've had here, everyone is starting out at 0. If the SWAC gets out there and wins 70% of their outer conference games, they'll be sending 6, 7, 8 teams to the tournament. So it's what? And we need to get the Lopes the waiver. I mean, we need to focus our energy on our team and get them the waiver.
There they are. Everybody, Lopes up. It's going to be a great season. We'll be talking to you plenty of podcasts throughout the season. and enjoy the games.